Well, hey, Dylan, it's great to catch up with you.
Yeah,
Um,
good to
for
see
those,
you in person.
yeah, I know, right? And in the virtual person.
Yeah.
Um, for those of you that don't know Dylan Beck, he and I are good friends and both share a city, but we're doing this from different ends of the city
Different
via the
quadrants.
virtual, well, yeah, different quadrants of Portland virtually. Well, so I figure most of our audience kind of generally knows you, but I think like a really good starting place with one of these talks is if you want to give us a little bit of your background, kind of how you came into clay and some of that journey. I think that'd be a great place to start. So why don't you tell
Yeah.
us, yeah, what got you going and how you,
Yeah. Well, I think, it was, way back in 2000, the year 2000.
oh, the millennium.
Yes, I had gone to school at a technical college for forestry for a year, and that wasn't like doing it for me for various reasons. And so I thought I'd pursue art education and went to community college in Lancaster, Ohio, a little branch of Ohio University, and took a ceramics class there, and it was the first time that I was like totally consumed with anything, like that I was just obsessed with something that was
Yeah.
that's productive, right? And uh, and so from that point on, I was like pretty hooked on clay. And then I transferred down to Athens, Ohio, to go to Ohio University, which I had no idea at the time, but is one of the top ceramics programs in the country. And so being immersed there, they have a really big graduate program, and the grad students are right there in the studio with you. And so, seeing these people that were working professionally in the field, I was like, oh, this is something that I could like make a career out of.
Yeah.
And then, teaching in um, like K-12, I didn't really enjoy being in high school as a student.
As a high school
So,
student. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so when I did some like teaching observation, I felt like, I don't think I want to be in like a high school for my career. And so I just started, shifted to a fine art degree and wasn't really sure what I would do. But, seeing my teachers and having this interest in teaching, that's, I realized like, oh, I could, get my master's in
Hmm.
ceramics and pursue some teaching opportunities. And so I went to Illinois State for a year and worked with Paul Sakritis and Tyler Lotz, and that was
Yeah.
really amazing. And then got into graduate school at Tyler School of Art and worked with Nicholas Cripple and Julie York and Chad Curtis there.
Yeah.
And then, I was well on my way, and I was really fortunate. I got a tenure track teaching job while I was finishing up my final year of graduate school and that was at Kansas State University. So,
Okay.
so in the spring of 2008, I asked my wife if she was willing to move to Manhattan, Kansas with me to start that job. And I think she was just surprised that I had gotten a job at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Kansas, and that's where I began my professional art career and my teaching career, and spent like 5 years there before relocating to Portland, where I accepted a position to run the ceramics program at Oregon College of Art and Craft,
Yeah.
which I think you have a history with as well.
I have history there too. Yeah, we overlap along the way. It's like I was going to call out Tyler Lotz and Julie York were both in grad school when I was an undergrad at Alfred. So
Oh
I
yeah,
had them both intermittently as like teacher assistants or teachers in my
cool.
undergrad, my sophomore year. Yeah. But yeah, Oregon, I mean, OCAC, Oregon College Arts and Crafts is what brought me out here too. So we have
Yeah,
that
it brought a
commonality.
lot of people out, and it's
It
unfortunate
did.
that it closed 2 years back, because
Yeah.
now that kind of conduit for creative people in Portland has closed
It's
down.
kind of closed. Yeah, there's not the same. There's not that thing that pulls people here the same way that did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like people like ourselves that stay here. I mean, that's one of the voids that I think, will feel years to come from the loss of OCAC. Like we don't even know what we're losing yet until we see
Yeah.
less and less
Hopefully
folks.
new things will
That's yeah, that we
open up.
bring up more things. Yeah. And then you've been showing your work kind of in conjunction with being part of the academic world as well, of course. Like you and I, when you first came out here, I was really excited to kind of, for lack of a better word, try and invite you into our community by working on a show with you. And that was when we did cloud sourcing, which you had been doing that body of work since Kansas, or yeah, you had been doing that for a couple of years. Would you like to elaborate on it? Maybe elaborate on any of that
Yeah,
body?
definitely. I mean, for as long as I can remember making like really conscious decisions about what I was making, it's been inspired by the landscape that I live in. And so, you know, when I lived in Philadelphia, it's a very historic and urban landscape. And I've noticed that for a couple of years, like maybe when I move away from that landscape, it's still like there in me for a few years. And so for a few years when I lived in Kansas, I was still like responding to that landscape and making work about the urban environment and things like that. And then, yeah, living in Kansas, and the most impressive thing about the landscape is the sky, really, and the huge storms that come through. And so I started being enamored with the giant clouds, and also I think a lot about environmental issues. And so thinking about like global warming and larger storm systems and things like that. And so that became kind of a symbol for me. The cloud, the storm cloud, became this like symbol of kind of like a human activity altering the climate. And so, so yeah, then when I moved to Portland and you invited me to kind of work on a show with you, and I chose that theme, you know, I was looking at other ceramic artists that are working with the theme of the cloud. And there's a number of people, and it's been a theme, you know, you think back to ancient like Chinese and Korean ceramics and the cloud forms that are on the decorative surface of pots, and like it's a ongoing theme in ceramics is the cloud. And so yeah, and so I think for a few years after living in Portland, I was still kind of like working through that Kansas landscape inspiration.
Yeah. And then obviously Portland influenced you a little differently, and not that we don't have beautiful skies, but that kind of segued in there. Definitely not. Just one big cloud up there.
Little smoky today.
A little smoky. little smoky. But yeah, that got you looking more at landscape, right? And like more of the
and just you know, wanting to be out in it. Like a lot of my hobbies are camping and hiking and foraging for mushrooms and fishing and things like that. And so being out in this landscape that's so dynamic, and it's relatively young compared to Kansas in terms of geologic time. You know, I think like millions of years ago, the coast was in Idaho. And then it's just like from subduction and like the tectonic plates, and like the coast is like built up. And so, you know, there's a lot of exposed rock and a lot of volcanic activity and things like that. And really started to think about the earth as kind of like a living being, in terms of like, you know, we have like veins and blood and things like that, and there's like volcanoes and lava, and so some of the works are kind of inspired by that idea. And then also, you know, with Instagram becoming such a large part of people's like social media life, especially artists, I think, use that medium.
All they're promoting.
And I started following these like people who take nature photography and stuff, and I would notice that there's this like desire to like create a high def reproduction of this natural landscape. I'm looking at the landscape behind your head, and it's this like dramatic, like sublime. It looks like the Oregon coast, you know?
Yeah, the moon hitting the waves and
and like one thing that's cool, like that painting, it can start to capture some of that feeling of like actually being there, because you're creating like a facsimile, you're creating like a recreation or a reproduction of the image. And so I got really interested in this idea of like, you're standing on a cliff looking at the ocean and it's just like the most amazing, beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. And then you take a picture of it and it's just, the picture just falls so short, right?
Oh yeah.
Never. So then when you post it, you're like, okay, what filters can I add and how can I like key this up and make it like super amazing to try to like insert some of that, like the wind blowing in your face and the warmth of the sun and like the sound of the birds and all the things that add up to make that an amazing experience. So some of these sculptures are this like hyper experiential thing where it's like inspired by that like desire to try to like amplify the natural world. Yeah, and so like a piece like HDR, which or high dynamic range, is in reference to HDR filters, or the piece Lux is specifically like one of the main filters that's on Instagram is called Lux.
Called Lux, okay.
In the format of that piece that hangs on the wall is this like square. It's like made literally to look like and feel like the little square image on Instagram. Or you could easily take a picture
use
of
it.
Just right in your Instagram post. So I'm really interested in just like how we like experience and interact with and share the natural world and like what's our relationship to the natural world. I feel like we're, you know, more and more disconnected from natural cycles and things like that. And so I'm really interested in trying to make work that will get people to like think about it in a different way or reconnect or be like inspired by this like amazing thing that's inspired by nature, and then maybe they'll look at the natural world in a different way.
Hopefully respect it more as well.
Yeah.
Well, and then you got you and I were talking a little bit earlier. I was pretty excited to hear you've got some different projects that came to fruition even during pandemic times. So you've been doing some commission works. That's kind of a segue from the cloud work so far. Yeah.
I'd say these public commissions that I've been getting are, part of being in Kansas and looking up at the sky all the time. There were a lot of days where the only clouds in the sky were contrails from airplanes. And so thinking about that, and it's often referred to as like flyover country. And so I'd see, these like this effect of airplanes in the sky, and you think about air travel more. So I started doing these series of pieces where I was slip casting these small airplanes. They're maybe like from this big to this big, pretty tiny, 3 different sizes, and making these arrangements. I've recently placed a large commission in the Hilton Curio collection hotel that's right at LAX airport. And then just this summer, another installation at the Homewood Suites at Dulles Airport in DC just went up. And then another one is probably coming around the corner for an airport near you.
Heck yeah. And then those ones that are already in place, those are in like, what would you call it, like a lobby space? Like what's the sort of...
the one in Dulles is in the lobby, and then the one
lobby,
at LAX is in the restaurant.
In the restaurant, okay. So people could go see them if they're in those areas.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, that one is nice when you're leaving LAX airport. When you drive by the hotel, you can just look in the window and see it.
Rad.
Yeah, it's nice.
That is super cool. And then something I wanted to talk about, the current body of work that we currently have up on for our online feature. You added, I would imagine, and maybe cut me off if you think I'm totally wrong, but I moving into that body of work, kind of using glaze as kind of form, and just kind of going down what I would imagine is a new rabbit hole. Technically, you had to develop that for some time too. That's not just like a out of the box. Or, part of your normal toolbox or anybody's normal toolbox that's exploring those sort of things.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, looking at images of landscape and looking at, I was seeing some pretty awesome images of glaciers in Greenland, and thinking about this.
I remember that trip,
flow, and And I did this collaboration with Amanda Salov and another artist named Michael Boonstra. The three of us worked with a, I remember his name, a researcher down there named Scott Klesick, who down in Corvallis at Oregon State University. And he works on understanding the microbiome of these undersea mud volcanoes. And he got a grant to have artists interpret his research and make work about it. And so that was when I really started thinking about like, how do I create this like ooze? I was making some pieces that had this like flowing ooze thing incorporated into it, but I wasn't using glaze. I was using like acrylic paint or other materials to do it. And I kind of challenged myself to try to investigate glaze and see, because it does that. It flows and it freezes. And, so like, why not? And that's the material that I love so much. So that's where that work kind of started. We had an exhibition at NCECA in Pittsburgh.
I was just going to call that out, actually. Yeah, because I remember we had the collector's tour come through there. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and one of those pieces that came of that is in the permanent collection at the Everson Museum.
Oh, good.
Work right now.
Awesome.
Forever.
Yes, forever.
But yeah, so and that was from that exhibition. It was purchased right from NCECA.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a lot of research and development to get to the point where I could control that, and then now I'm on this infinite search for color. And which
so
is
color in the clay and the glaze, or either or both?
The glaze, like glaze coloring that flowing glaze and seeing, like broadening the palette, you know.
Okay. Fun. Well, I'm super excited to be showing your work. I mean, one of the things that one of the silver linings I think about doing these online things is just allowing us to work with more folks again. And I'd always, really enjoyed working with you when we did cloud sourcing. And as you know, it's like mounting these physical exhibitions, we can't work with everybody all the time. But this is kind of this neat way to like work with the people I want to be working with. And in our case, I guess even in the same city without even sitting in the same room, it's odd times, but it is. I think that's kind of one of the silver linings. I said it's allowing us to show this body of work. So yeah, I'm grateful that you chose to work with us on this. And
likewise, it's a really awesome opportunity. What Utecta Gallery is doing for the ceramics field is so important, especially in the Pacific Northwest. You're kind of the only game in town, so it's it feels really good to be a part of that, and to be able to show with the list of artists that you work with.
Well, thank you. Well, yeah. So if for everybody, check out Dylan's show. It's on the website. You can find him under the current exhibitions lists, and you can also search his name through our artist list. You'll find all his work up for the next week or two. So let's thank you, Dylan, first of all, for spending the time with me, and I look forward to working with you on this and upcoming projects. So keep me in the loop of what you're working on, and we can do other talks like this too, because I'd love to keep kind of sharing what you're working on with everybody. So
yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, virtual hugs, and I hope to see you soon physically.
Yeah, likewise. Well, take care.
Yeah, take care, Dylan. Thank you so much.